The 102nd edition of the Tour de France, and yes, it starts in the Netherlands in Utrecht, eventually making its way through to Paris. But there's a lot to take in before we get there. Many are nervous about stage 4 as they head across the pavé. And there's one individual time trial, that's today. A team time trial in Purmerlec before the first rest day. It's then down to Pau and into the Pyrenees. Through the Pyrenees, they then head into the Massif Central before arriving in the Alps. And the penultimate stage takes them to the top of Alpe d'Huez. That's where the final decision will be made in the race for yellow. They then transfer back to Paris and a day for the sprinters. 3,360 kilometres. Well, hello and welcome to the Netherlands. It is being billed as the battle of the big four, Nibali, Froome, Contador and Quintana. But the first race for yellow, it is a flat individual time trial of 13.8 kilometres. The only time trial of this year's tour. The least amount of kilometres against the clock since 1947, since post-Second World War. As you can see by the course profile, it is flat. Pancake flat, in fact. There's a few twists and turns to contend with. There's an enormous crowd on hand, and they're hopeful that the Dutch can find the yellow jersey for the first time, unbelievably, since 1989. But there's history being made with Daniel Tekle-Hermanot, the first Eritrean to roll down the ramp. And in fact, he's not on his own. There's 3 Eritreans in this year's race. The national time trial champion of Eritrea, riding for MTMQ Becker. History being made at this year's Tour de France. Not the first African outfit to ride the race. That dates back to the 1950s. But this is an extraordinary achievement for what is a very important team. Welcome to those of you in South Africa who are watching. I'm sure you're very proud to see the name of MTMQ Becker on the biggest stage in world cycling. Tekle-Hermanot, he arrives with some good form just recently at the Criterium de Dauphiné, which was won by another African-born cyclist, Chris Froome. It was Tekle-Hermanot who took out the King of the Mountains classification. He was so aggressive there in lots of breakaways, showing the team towards the front, making it clear they're well and truly justified in their invitation to the Tour de France. And you can only imagine the enthusiasm coursing through the veins of Tekle-Hermanot this afternoon. They've got some high hopes along the way for a stage win as well, MTMQ Becker. Edvald Boasson-Hagen, he is the team leader. He's won 2 stages of this race in the past, both of those coming back in 2011 when he was riding with Team Sky. And after the abandonment of Bradley Wiggins, it was Boasson-Hagen who saved the Tour for Team Sky. This year, he is very much the leader of the squad. And an exciting team. Louis Mainkies is one of the riders that I'm definitely looking forward to watching. Louis, the former South African national road champion, made his debut in a Grand Tour last year. That was at the Tour of Spain, and he climbed well. He climbed really well. But so too did this man, Tekle-Hermanot, last year at the Tour of Spain. His second participation in that race. He finished in a solid 47th position. The crowds in Utrecht, they really are extraordinary. Just tucking through that corner, Tekle-Hermanot. First time the Tour de France was actually hosting the start of the Tour in the Grand Depart outside of France itself was in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam in 1954. There were huge crowds there on that occasion. I've had the privilege of seeing some old black and white images of that year's race. I think the crowds today are even stronger than what they were then. As we heard, and the 1.2 bikes per Dutch person. And there are thousands of bikes scattered right throughout the city. They're building what is purported to be the biggest bike parking facility in the world. It's due to open up at some point next year. It'll have storage for somewhere in the vicinity of 20,000 bikes. It's multi-level parking of a very different kind. "26-year-old Eritrean flying around the course. He spent a couple of seasons riding with the Orica Green Edge team before moving across to MTMQ Becker last year. He had some real difficulties in 2013, his final season with the Orica Green Edge team. Not in terms of his form, that was fine. In fact, his form was good. And there were no issues with the team itself. There were problems with getting a visa to come to Europe and race. And he didn't get his first chance to race in Europe in 2013 until June. Many on Orica Green Edge felt that set him back significantly in terms of his development. It's put him around about 12 months behind where he could possibly be. They had a lot of faith in him. They thought that he had big prospects for Grand Tours, particularly into the high mountains. But at the end of his contract with that team, MTMQ Becker pounced and they got themselves a quality cyclist. And the canals previously used to ferry goods in and out of the city. They're not used so much for that these days. However, the old wharfs that were labelled alongside the canal, they've now been converted, many of them, into restaurants, which with the weather that we've had in the Netherlands over the past week or so, have been extremely busy. Daniel Tekle-Harmanot leading the way for MTMQ Becker, the first rider out on course. And one of two Eritreans on the team, the other one, Mehawi Kudos, the 21-year-old, who showed some good form last year, in fact, at the Tour of Spain. And Kudos is the African individual time trial champion, and Tekle-Harmanot is the Eritrean individual time trial champion. Some strong men against the clock. The Haar Castle, the largest of its kind in the Netherlands. Medieval fortress with some superb towers, turrets, ramparts, canals, the gates that are scattered around it as well. This castle dates back to the late 14th, early 15th century. It has some 200 rooms and 30 bathrooms. There's a vast restoration project that was taken out on the castle back in 2001 through to 2011, and they're guided tours that can be taken of the inside. And you can just imagine the listing on a real estate board. 200 rooms, 30 bathrooms, and a delightful location with some beautiful English-style gardens scattered around it. One of the beauties of the Tour de France, or one of the things that attracts so many people to watching the sport for the first time, is the landscape and the history that we get to see. This year we won't be going through the Loire Valley, which is famous for its chateaux. This year's course really skirts the outside of France, and there are two long transfers. A windy stage tomorrow as we stay in the Netherlands and head to Zeeland, and extend into Belgium for a stage finish up the Mer de Huy, which is famous for hosting the Spring Classic Flèche Wallonne. And we then move across to another sector which is famous for the Spring Classics, famous for Paris-Roubaix. Stage 4, many will be nervous about that as they head across sectors of pavé used in Paris-Roubaix. Luke Durbridge. Australian time trial champion, Australian road champion from 2013. This is one of these big targets. 10 seconds to go for Durbridge before he rolls down the ramp. Affectionately known as Turbo Durbo, he's going to need to put the turbo into overdrive today. An outside contender perhaps. Many expect somewhere between 10th and 15th place for Luke Durbridge. And one thing that often motivates the Western Australian is doubt from those on the outside, as he doesn't lack any on the inside. Second participation for Durbridge in the Tour de France. Most notably last year, he was in a few breakaways, but there was at one point at the top of a mountain pass where he had a run-in with a Soignier from Movistar, who unfortunately knocked Luke off his bike. There's no damage done, but Luke got a little emotional. He took a swing and a miss at the Soignier. And Soignier did the right thing as Durbridge almost took a swing and a miss at that speed hump. A little bit of a rear wheel slip as he went over the top. After Durbridge had the run-in with the Movistar Soignier at last year's tour, the Soignier quickly went to the team hotel of Orica Green Edge afterwards and apologised. And Luke correspondingly apologised apologise.
I think all the riders are thinking first about the win, and then of course with the win, and then at the end of the day they're going to look at the yellow results sheet. They're going to see how much time they have, and then can they keep that after the sprint stage and the time bonuses in stage 2. So taking the yellow jersey is a bonus at the end of the day, but first anybody wants to win a stage in the Tour de France.
I think Dumoulin is the favorite. Cancellara has had a difficult season. He crashed, he sustained severe injury, but he seems to be back to his best gradually. It's going to be a close battle between those two, I think.
They show Tony Martin showed in the Dauphiné that he really did a good job. Also Cancellara showed in Switzerland that he's on his way, so I think they are still there to go for the victory. Yeah.
I ride for yellow, not for the stage win, so for sure it's bigger than any other time trial in the middle of the race, and it's a really big opportunity for me.
Matthews, not a pure... But certainly on stages like stage 5 and 6 are days that could well suit Michael Matthews. And just moments ago, through the first checkpoint, Jack Bauer, the New Zealander, has gone through with what is the quickest time. Bauer's gone through the first checkpoint, which is after just 7 kilometres having been covered, with a time of 7 minutes and 41 seconds. Tekla Hamanot is 13 seconds behind him, and Nelson Oliveira has gone through at 9 seconds behind. Tekla Hamanot, though, is closing in on the finish line. He's inside the final 2 kilometres. Meanwhile, at the Greg Van Avermaet, he is to become a father for the first time at the end of July. Third at the Tour of Flanders this year, third at Paris-Roubaix. So close to breaking through for the big win. He's developing the title of the eternal bridesmaid in those spring classics.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1,
The specialist of the spring classics, Greg Van Avermaet, is underway. He will be playing a crucial role throughout the first week, Greg Van Avermaet, supporting the American TJ Van Garderen. At the press conference yesterday, the team manager, Jim Okovits, made the point that BMC is one of the few teams in recent history that has the experience of actually winning the Tour de France. They did that, of course, in 2011 with Cadel Evans, who was seen at the start line today offering some advice to his former teammates. This year, they're hoping that TJ Van Garderen, the American, can challenge. Inside the final kilometre for Tekla Hamanot. And an update at the intermediate checkpoint. A new fastest time, Jos van Enden, the Dutchman, riding for Lotto Jumbo. So that's an indication that the Dutch are highly motivated today. Tekla Hamanot, though, he is also motivated. At the very least, he'll be able to cross the line with what will, for a little while, be the fastest time. But there's plenty of quick men to come behind him. Tekla Hamanot, he's a man we expect to see in the breakaways in the second phase of this year's race, once we get down to the Pyrenees. The winner of the King of the Mountains classification at the Criterium de Dauphiné this season. He gets his first Tour de France underway and stops the clock with a time of 16 minutes and 30 seconds. And here comes Jack Bauer through the first checkpoint with what was the third fastest time. The big Kiwi has got a role to play certainly throughout the first week of racing. He'll be protecting Andrew Talansky, their American leader, and also Dan Martin, who will be hoping to collect a stage win in the mountains. And he has closed in quickly across the second part of the course, and Bauer has gone to the top of the leaderboard. Fastest time for Jack Bauer by just 1 second. A few riders out on course that were quicker than him at the midway point. Luke Durbridge been amongst them. But Jack Bauer, for now at least, has the fastest time. This is Scarponi. The first of the riders from Astana to roll down the ramp. All 9 riders that were at the team's presentation for Astana, they are starting. Lars Boom, the Dutchman, who grew up around about 60 kilometres away from Utrecht. There was discussion perhaps he wouldn't be starting earlier on this morning as the result of having low cortisol levels. There were concerns that it might be damaging to his health to actually ride the race. The UCI said that they have no concerns about that for Lars Boom. So the man who won the stage across the Pavé last year on stage 5 will be starting. Michele Scarponi, a winner himself of the Giro d'Italia back in 2011. He'll be one of the key right-hand men to the defending champion Vincenzo Nibali once we get down to the mountains. Until then, however, the role for Michele Scarponi will be survive and stay out of trouble and make sure he doesn't get injured. The profile picture for Luke Durbridge is smiling. I'm not sure whether he'll be doing the same right now. This is Jos van Endem looking to get the better of the time of Jack Bauer. All the indications at the midway checkpoint were that he would be faster, to the tune of 15 seconds then, and he has motored home over the back end of the course. Lotto and El Jumbo, with their first rider on course, has got the new best time. Van Endem goes to the top of the leaderboard with a 55-second buffer. Chavanel, 6-time French individual time trial champion.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1,
He's tasted plenty of success in the past in this race. He's now at the back end of his career, but he's a proud Frenchman, and at 36 years of age, he'll still be looking for success. A strong performance here for Sylvain Chavanel, somewhere around 10th to 15th position, and he might be in with a chance later on in the tour to collect the leader's jersey. We head into Belgium on Monday, and when the race went to Belgium in 2010, it was Sylvain Chavanel who broke away. He won solo, and he took the yellow jersey. Expect more of the breakaway antics of Sylvain Chavanel throughout the next 3 weeks of racing. The mouth wide open, sucking in dry air at this point for Luke Durbridge. Stifling conditions, 35, 36 degrees. The Western Australian, amongst anybody in this year's race, should be well acclimatised to these sorts of conditions. But when it's hot, it's still hot and it hurts. It won't be the fastest time for Durbridge, but it is a good start. And Durbridge approaching the finish line in Utrecht, just out the front of the train station. The final left-hand turn before he lines up to approach the line. Let's now head across to Paul Sherwin and Phil Liggett.
Thank you very much indeed, Matt. Well, what a beautiful day it is here in Utrecht as we're watching the arrival of Turbo Durbo. Luke Durbridge coming home. He was 10 seconds off the time of Jos van Endem, and that time has passed now. But Turbo Durbo is up amongst the leaders for the moment. And he'll be pleased enough with that, I think. It is viciously hot out there today as he continues now to start his Tour de France, his second crack at the Tour. He wrote a solid Tour de France last year.
Yeah, the very important thing for the riders on a hot day like this, it's tickling 34 degrees Celsius here this afternoon, a little cooler than the 38 degrees Celsius that was predicted. And although it's important to have a really good warm-up for the time trial, you don't want the body to heat up too much, which is why we've seen a lot of riders warming up with ice jackets on to keep the core body temperature down just to the right level. It's almost as critical as making sure the tyres are right on a Formula One car before the start on a hot day.
Well, you know, when temperatures get this hot, the clouds usually explode late into the afternoon and the rain is torrential. Now, I'm not wishing that on the race, but it's happened in London overnight and it's happened in Germany, and it's scheduled to arrive here in the last hour of racing, but there's no sign of it at the moment. And so the move by Nairo Quintana to start in the first 60 riders could prove to be a tactical one that might have an advantage for the rider. He could get dry roads. And then again, they could all get dry roads, as we got 6-time champion of France here, Sylvain Chavanel, practice what he does best, riding a time trial.
Well, he was 30. So back with Sylvain Chavanel, I was just saying he was 36 years of age just before the start of the Tour. He was only third in the National Time Trial Championships this year, which is quite a surprise really, because he's won that title on 6 occasions, and he's not really got too many records to report home this year. Just looking down here at the Halkenwaard Stadium, just outside of the centre of Utrecht, and of course they would like to thank Jan Janssen and Joop Zoetemelk, 2 former winners of the Tour de France, for the start of the Tour de France in Utrecht.
Well, not surprisingly, Paul, he gets the best cheer so far. A Dutchman departing on home soil here, as we switch back to watch Greg Van Avermaet come up towards the finish. And Avermaet not his third best at the check. He was 10 seconds off the pace of Jos van Emden. Now Van Emden finished very strongly and held Luc Derbisch at bay by 30 odd seconds, and it looks as though he's doing the same now to Greg Van Avermaet, who's also losing ground. He might consolidate or hold on to third place if he gets to the finish in a bit of a hurry.
Well, Van Emden was third in the National Time Trial Championship, so he's got a fair reference. But this man, Greg Van Avermaet, realises he's got to do as much as he can to put a fast time in here, because as we head down towards Belgium and the finish at the top of the Mur de Huy, a lot of riders will be dreaming about the possibility of wearing the yellow jersey in the first couple of days. And the reason that they're doing that is to try and limit their losses in an individual time trial like this.
Well, 15:46. He holds on to third place for the moment. Jos van Emden, a Dutchman, heading up the leaderboard. Everybody's enjoying themselves, and boy, that water looks inviting right now. The temperature here is around about 35-36 degrees Celsius. We're tickling 100 degrees at the moment. Dustbin look clean because of the flowers and the way they decorate everything. It really is a lovely country.
Clean and organised, and this is a pretty impressive ride here by Robert Gesink. As I said, Phil, not normally renowned as an individual time trialist, and I think he will be happy with that time.
I think he should be, because he's gone into second place. Nobody, though, is getting close to Jos van Emden. 7 minutes and 27 seconds at the midway turn. But
a minute and 10 seconds is a huge amount of time for Mark Cavendish to lose this afternoon. But I have to say that on the far side of the track, Nasser Bouhanni, he will be trying to nurse himself through these opening stages, because he had a very dramatic crash at the finish of the French National Championships, and there was a big question mark right up until 5 o'clock last night whether or not he'd be able to come out of the starting gate. But he said, Phil, if it was any other race, he would not be here. But this is the Tour de France. That's what's so special about this event. Everybody wants to be here. It's the biggest theatre in the world for a professional cyclist.
And Nasser's a sprinter as well, and we're looking for Mark Cavendish at the finish at Zeeland tomorrow, I suspect. Like Rowan Dennis, his last Tour de France was in 2013, and like Rowan Dennis, he didn't get round, of course. He abandoned the race on stage 6. So he's back again, he's back with a vengeance, and he wasn't going to let it crash. And it was a spectacular crash in France in the National Championships. This is Rowan Dennis now, and he's taken a minute out of Lars Bak, and that is a good scalp. Bak is a former time trial champion of Denmark. Rowan just flies by him, and right before a huge audience here. I wonder if he can find that 1 second to give him the lead.
Well, that is all he's looking for here, 15 minutes and 11 seconds, but he seems to be going faster in the second part of the course. You could see the speed difference between those two riders when he caught Lars Bak. He used a little bit of the slipstream, flicked straight past him. That will give him an added advantage of maybe a second or so. He was 1 second off at half distance, but he'd be liking to turn that into a 1 second advantage if he can.
Richie Porte here, the champion of Australia as well, as he continues, though, just checking down at he's not into the leader positions down at the check yet. In fact, he's not on the board. I'm not sure he's even gone there just at the moment.
Yes,
Paul.
he's just gone through in 12th place, looking for 22 seconds. This may well be a little bit short and violent for Richie Porte, but the important thing is to set the advantages and to set the times for his teammates who go off a little later in the afternoon.
This Is he going to go inside 15 seconds? That would be unthinkable on this course of 13.8 seconds, 8 kilometres rather, as he swings around now. He is on the ride of his life here. Rowan Dennis is going to put a mark up on the board, which many riders, and maybe all of them, are going to find impossible to match. This is a man who held the world hour record. He was second to Richie Porte in the national titles this year. Now he comes up towards the line. He must know, he must see the clock as he pushes out the seconds. He's inside. What an incredible ride. Paul, that could go the distance.
Well, this man has got a serious reference. The former world hour record holder, a world champion on the track. This man, I think, over the last 10 days has specifically aimed for this. This is probably the only stage of the Tour de France where he's given a free rein, because the BMC squad from the United States are here to look after the interests of TJ Van Garderen. But today, because of his pedigree, they've said, go on, Rowan, it's your day today. And there he set the bar very, very high. He did 14 minutes and 56 seconds.
And that's waiting for Nairo Quintana into the start house. He goes on the hour, and he's one of our big fours. We quickly go out on course at the moment with Rigoberto Urán. Urán himself, the champion of Colombia, while another Colombian man who hopes he'll be first to the podium in Paris in 3 weeks' time is now making ready in the start house himself. Big moments this for Quintana. He's only just come back to the Tour de France after a 2-year gap when he finished second.
Well, Nairo Quintana, again, hoping to raise the bar very high for Colombian cycling on what I say as a renaissance of the sport in that country. And for a man not renowned really for his time trialling ability, Quintana is a winner of the Giro d'Italia, second overall in the Tour de France. He's quietly prepared the Tour de France at home in the region of Boyacá. He said, I don't need to go to altitude training. He said, I live at 3,000 meters and I'd rather be at home, because, as he, in fact, his team manager said to us just before the start of this race, he said, because I don't have to pay for a hotel.
The long road, Paul, the noise of the crowd. Quintana sitting in second time at this point, but he will lose time as he races this last 600 metres.
Well, I don't think he's going to lose as much as he might have done on a course like this. This man has ridden on courage here this afternoon, of the worst possible terrain that he could be racing over for a man who is reputedly one of the best climbers in the world. It's this pan-flat, pancake course here in Holland. I think when the clock stops at the end of the day, he'll be quite satisfied, as he's thrown his bike around all of these corners very, very aggressively indeed.
Well, he knows that Contador, Froome are going to ride hard, Nibali too. He's got to give it his best shot. He wants to stay close to those riders for the first week before he gets them in the Pyrenees and can take them on. This is a good ride. Hey, he's comparing himself against one of the best riders in the world at the time trial, who set the highest ever average speed for a time trial, and he's crossed the line 14th to Rowan Dennis. A very good ride, I think, by Nairo Quintana. He'll wait to see what the big boys do at the end of the day and see how
surprised this afternoon. He's on great form. Peter Sagan, 3 times winner of the green jersey points competition. Well, Sagan created a bit of a surprise this year in the Amgen Tour of California when, in fact, he went out and he won the individual time trial when people thought he was going to get wiped away from the top end of the overall standings. He defended it in the mountains and went on to win with the time bonus sprint. Oh, now there's a problem here. Now this, just having a quick look there. Now that was a little bit of surprise. That's Dominique Nerds. He rides for the Bora Argon squad. And a little bit of confusion. Matthias Brandl is the rider a little bit further up there. He's another former world time trial champion. And, well, he's not going to rival the time of Rowan Dennis as he comes up to the line as well. Just a little bit further behind him, but there's a little chance to spot Bryce Felu and Dominique Nerds.
And Brandl comes up towards the line here, another former hour record holder, as indeed was Rowan Dennis, but for Brandl, he's in 5th place for him. So at the checkpoint now, Tony Martin has gone through 4 seconds slower than the leader, but 3 seconds slower than Rowan Dennis. The challenge is on.
The challenge is on, and let's not forget how experienced Tony Martin is, whether it's the World Championships or the German Time Trial Championships. He is a master of the effort against the clock, and that's what he will be doing. He'll be trying to lift his pace in the final few kilometres. He knows the time to beat. The time on the clock is the only time registered inside of 15 minutes, 14 minutes and 56 seconds.
Jens, we're looking at Tony Martin. You know this guy better than any of us, but can he make up that difference now in what's left of this time trial?
Well, I believe Tony has a plan. He has the advantage of knowing the times, to the split times. Probably his team car followed other riders of his team, so he has split times on every corner of the road. He will know exactly where he has to go, how fast he has to go, and I think he has enough left to actually turn it around and gain this 4 seconds somewhere. Once he got his big diesel engine warmed up, he's just like rolling. So I believe he got a fair chance of making it.
Well, the way he's riding these corners, he's certainly not losing any time at the moment, but 3 seconds nobody, Paul, has achieved that throughout the whole of the day. Everybody has lost time on the journey from that checkpoint.
Yeah, but just to go back to Jens there, Jens, we talked about this time trial. We looked at the corners and thought they were technical, but once you put the barriers up, they're not that technical, these corners. That probably gives the advantage to Tony Martin, I think, over Fabian Cancellara. Do you agree?
Yes, indeed, it looks like the corners are actually a lot easier to take than we thought by looking at the profile and looking at the road book. They did a good job here in securing the road and putting the barriers in a way that riders can take the corners in a best possible angle. So yes, it does look like a very fast course, and the times these riders do, they just confirm that it is a very fast course.
Well, this massive crowd enjoying the hot sun of Utrecht here. The time trial is still finally poised, but what will Tony Martin do?
Now, this is a rather interesting story because this man was born 50 kilometers away from here. Lars Boom, born in Vlemen. You can see the damp coming off him. That was to keep him as cool as possible. There was a possibility that this man wasn't going to start overnight after tests revealed low cortisol levels. Now, I was just listening into the crowd there. The low cortisol levels does not mean that you have been involved in any infringement at all of doping activities, but it's an indication that there may well be a health problem. The Movement for Credible Cycling has an agreement that if you have low cortisol levels, you should be prevented from starting for 8 days. But unfortunately, fortunately, I think for the Dutch at least, Lars Boom's team decided to go against that agreement. It's not an official agreement anywhere in the world. It doesn't come under the International Cycling Union's rules and regulations, so he is going out to start. Back now with Peter Sagan.
Peter Sagan out on the road here. He can be a very good time trialist, Paul. It's just that today he's racing that he would have to race the fastest time trial in the history of the Tour de France, and I just can't see that being possible. Boysenhagen out of the start house.
Champion of Norway in the individual time trial, champion of Norway in the road race. This man, all of a sudden, after having a little bit of a difficult start to the season, Phil, I think now is coming into form at the right time for MTN Quebec. He loves riding for this team, and I think they're extremely proud of the fact that he is a double time trial champion.
Yes, this guy is sort of come alive again now after leaving Team Sky. He's become a winner again on the MTN Quebec team. And now look at Tony Martin here, who's just eating in. This is Romain Sicard, the Basque Frenchman, in front of him now, and he's pulling him back into his sights. 2.2 kilometers out. He's pitched almost a minute. It's got to be a record, otherwise he can't possibly beat Rowan Dennis.
Well, that's pressure for anybody. Romain Sicard, former world under-23 road racing champion. That's him a little bit further up the road. His sights will be set on the high spots of the Tour de France, like the Pyrenees and, of course, the Alps. Martin coming up to his slipstream as close as possible and just catapulting slightly out. That's not an illegal move. He's allowed to, as long as he moves directly out of the slipstream of the rider who he catches. He will not be penalised at all, but he will get a slight advantage, maybe a second or a second and a half, but that could be the difference between winning and losing.
12.3 kilometres done. The clock is telling us the time of Dennis 14.56, so we're approaching. He's got to be through in a minute. He's looking for that kilometre banner if he's going to do it, and it's not very far away now. This is going to be a desperately close finish, I think. Tony Martin against Rowan Dennis. We just want to see Rowan Dennis's face right now, sat at the finish house rather. Back out on course. This is Peter Sagan looking very, very smoothly on his nice S-Works bike, but is it quick enough? He's not giving us any indication at the check.
Well, he's never really been renowned as an individual time trialist, but he has actually ridden high, finished in the top 20 in long time trials at the Tour de France before. But I think the big revelation was that victory in the Amgen Tour of California. That was a quick glimpse there of Rowan Dennis, the man who sits in the hot seat. 14 minutes and 56 seconds, 55 kilometres an hour. Now he's going to have a chance to see Tony Martin. But what is the clock going to tell us? Is he going to rival? It's going to be very, very close indeed. 14 and a half minutes. He's got to get to the finish line now in around about 20 seconds from now as he comes through the chicane. The time to beat, 14:56 for Rowan Dennis. Tony Martin, can he do it? He's been the world champion. He's the current time trial champion of Germany. It's all about this final few meters for the line. He's digging deep. He's looking for it. Will he do it? The clock is ticking by. It's going to be oh so very close, and he's not going to do it because Rowan Dennis is still the leader of this bike race, and Tony Martin goes outside by 5 seconds. Well, Rowan Dennis, probably biting his fingernails. If he didn't do it before today, he's probably started right here this afternoon. He still holds on to the overall lead. He can tick off the favourites one by one as to who can now beat the man who sits in the hot seat. There you go.
Tony Martin didn't recover, and it seems everybody has that trouble. Alberto Contador will not be looking to win the race today, but he'll be looking to finish very, very closely to Chris Froome, Nibali and Quintana.
Well, we talk about these short, violent efforts as we look here at Alberto Contador preparing. Phil, it's very much like the start of a Formula One race. You've got to get to the starting grid. You've got to get to the starting position with a very hot engine. Andrew Talansky, though, in the Stars and Stripes, a newly crowned American national time trial champion. And he knows how important this time trial is to him.
On this 4th of July, Andrew Talansky is set to roll.
So, Captain America, Andrew Talansky's finished 10th in the Tour de France in the past. He crashed out last year, very sad to do so. It was a crazy little crash on the sprint up towards the finish line. He went down, struggled for the next few days and had to pull out. Jerome Koppel, by the way, is the newly crowned French national time trial champion. He beat Sylvain Chavanel on that occasion. So he too is coming into the Tour de France in fine form. Rides for the IAM cycling squad of Switzerland. And still the question is waiting to see what Peter Sagan's time is going to be like coming up to the intermediate time sprint. Alexander Kristoff. Well, not a surprise really. Kristoff is not an individual time trialist. He's much better known for coming out of the big bunch sprints, and that will be what he'll be looking for tomorrow.
So Alexander Kristoff, 54th place, not important. He might well cross the swords tomorrow with Mark Cavendish. But
Fabian Cancellara, because of experience and because of the fact that I think he's on ascending form coming up to the Tour de France.
Fabian Cancellara has taken the start. He is a prologue specialist in the Tour de France. He knows it, but there's a question mark on his form. He's coming back from serious injury in the Classics. For Fabian Cancellara, you know, it all began so well in 2004 because he won the prologue there, and that was in Liège, where we go not far away in a couple of days' time. And he kept the yellow jersey for a while. Then in 2007, he won in London, and what a crowd that was. I remember that like it was only yesterday. He is a prologue specialist, Paul. This isn't technically a prologue, but the fact is it's the first day of the Tour de France, and he's the only man left who can possibly beat a perfect day for the Australian Dennis.
Well, it wasn't a prologue, Phil, when he won in Monaco either, because it was around about 13.5 to 14 kilometres, a very difficult course. People said it didn't suit Fabian Cancellara, but he is a man of the big occasions. And I think, you know, the fact that he had that very nasty injury in the first part of the season, he's battled his way back. He fought his way through the Tour of Switzerland, was beaten in the time trial there, but I think, you know, he knows how to rise to the occasion.
And that, I think, might be to his standing here. He was beaten by Tom Dumoulin a couple of weeks ago in both time trial stages of the Tour of Switzerland. Dumoulin at the moment sits in 3rd place and 8 seconds slower than Rowan Dennis. And Dennis himself will know. This man is the only man now who can stop him becoming the next Australian to wear the yellow jersey. And if memory serves you right, we've had 7 wearers of the yellow jersey from Australia. Phil Anderson, Stuart O'Grady, Brad McGee, Robin McEwen, Cadel Evans and Simon Gerrans. Are we about to see the next one? And even when you come from Switzerland, which is a little bit away from Holland, the crowd are still behind the sport. TJ Van Garderen in the start house now. Best young rider and finished 5th in the 2012 Tour de France. This is a man who is really fired up for this event. He won the Amgen Tour of California a couple of years ago, didn't ride it this year. He wants this race.
Well, Phil, talk about the American rider with the Dutch name. They will be loving him around the course here. But Fabian Cancellara has just gone through with the 4th best time at half distance, 2 seconds adrift. He's
but
throwing down the
only 1
gauntlet.
second adrift of Dennis. That's the significant point. Only 1 second adrift of Rowan Dennis. But hey, we've been there before with a couple of other riders who faded on the running. So we'll see. But Cancellara may well be riding himself in. If there's anybody that can rise to the occasion, it is this rider from Switzerland. He's a very popular guy as well. He's a family man. Everybody will be cheering on Cancellara. It is going to be a sprint to the line.
This looks like the necklace of Alejandro Valverde, the road racing champion, and the teammate of Nairo Quintana.
He'll be a very, very strong ally for Quintana in the mountains this time. He's a man full of surprises. He's got some terrific performances under his belt. Alberto Contador will be next to follow 1 minute later now. Back out up front. This is the moment. Alberto Contador stretches out his neck. He knows how important the time trials are. He's run time trials before, but they're a lot hillier and longer than this. Fabian Cancellara has gone through the check and he's only 1 second behind the time of Rowan Dennis. That will come down to the line. Contador starts. This most popular rider from Spain, and attempting this year to do the double. The first time the Giro and the Tour de France will have been won in the same year, and the last man was the late Marco Pantani in 1998.
Those little crashes, especially the one I had in the individual time trial a couple of years ago, he said, I don't think it's worth taking the risks anymore.
Well, look at this now. Cancellara, ahead of Cancellara is Rui Costa here, former world road race champion, being pulled back for a minute by Cancellara. Cancellara is absolutely flying. He's using him now as a target, and he's going to zoom over his shoulder as he closes right in on. As long as he keeps going, that's legal. As we go back to the start house, the man who dominated the Tour de France last year is last to go. Nibali slips through the gears. He made his reputation on the roads of the United Kingdom in general and Yorkshire in particular. He never lost his grip on the Tour de France till Paris. But all of the favourites on that occasion crashed out by stage 10. Now he's got to face them again, and can he handle them? As we look towards the finish now, Cancellara has gone past Costa. Look at the clock here, 14:30. This is going to be desperately close as he comes up towards the turn now for the line. And this is the crucial flick towards the end. It's going to be close, call it. It could even go down to hundredths of a second here. The big man from Switzerland slips up the gears, kicks with those legs. 14:56. He's got 6 seconds to get to the line. Fabian Cancellara, is he going to spoil the party for Rowan Dennis? The answer is no, he is not. Rowan Dennis becomes the 7th Australian to wear the yellow jersey in the Tour de France as Cancellara comes in. I know we've got big names to finish, but they'll never beat that man now. It's impossible.
Well, it's going to be very, very difficult to beat Rowan Dennis at the top of the leaderboard, but Fabian Cancellara, like so many other of these riders, was rivaling his time at half distance, but it was the second half of the course where he really paid for those opening moments of effort.
Well, out on course now as we continue to watch the riders swing in. This is Jean-Christophe Perrault. As we switch down the road, Chris Froome, names we're going to be calling from probably stage 10 onwards in the mountains. Let's hope that Chris Froome gets to see stage 10 in the mountains, because last year he crashed out on stage number 5 and he has good form. Alberto Contador also, he left the Tour last year on stage number 10 with a broken leg. The Tour is fraught with danger. It's the nature of the beast. But now this time trial has been significant, and what a great time trial.
Brilliant time trial, well traced. And again, I think the Tour de France this year have tried to throw something in for everybody, especially over the first 9 stages. We've got mountain, we've got hilltop finishes, we've got cobblestones, we've got wind and difficult climatic conditions, but we've also got a test here in the individual time trial inside of 14 kilometers by a fraction. They've got some technical corners and of course some big power strips as well to give us our first indication of what's happening. Oh, this is Cancellara. For a moment.
I thought he crashed, but yes, Fabian's give his best.
Short, violent effort for Alberto Contador, who was getting himself back into form after a little bit of training at altitude after his victory in the Giro d'Italia, nodding his head a fraction there. He knows how violent this effort is. It really is a very difficult short effort over a period of around about 15 or 16 minutes. He's pushing, he's looking for that final little chicane. Again, not too bad a rider. The main contenders, some of them have lost a couple of chunks of time, and this is the first day in the psychological battle of supremacy.
Contador's losing time for Quintana, so after this first day of racing, advantage Quintana, who's beaten him in the time trial by a few seconds. Okay, maybe a bit more than a few seconds right now, but nonetheless Contador races up towards the line. It's not position that matters, it's the time lost, and as he hits the line, 15:54, and in fact he has beaten Quintana by 4 seconds.
Well, I don't think that's actually very much when you think about the time trialing prowess of Alberto Contador in the past. What's more important to me now is to see what Chris Froome is going to do, and Chris Froome now is trying to line himself up. Not a bad ride for Froome here as he starts to line himself up for the finish. For him, it could be the psychological blow. The best rider for the overall standing so far has been Robert Hessink, who is 11th, and he's lost 33 seconds.
Here comes Froome now, and he's got to stay on a par with Contador and Quintana, and at the moment he is, but he's got to sprint the gap shut here. Doesn't want to see 16 minutes come up on that clock. We're only talking seconds, let's face it, but you never know. Remember, Greg LeMond once won the Tour de France by 8 seconds. As Chris Froome hits the line, it's good, it's good. 15:46, the favourites are coming home hand in hand.
Right, only 3 riders left out on the course.
This is life knowing that he has just set the record in the time trial in a Tour de France. That's Rowan Dennis with his girlfriend, and around the back there, and he's going to pull on a yellow jersey tonight as the next leader from Australia in the Tour de France. Out to the champion defending, Vincenzo Nibali. And now we see Jean-Christophe Perrault out on course as well, second last year. He'll be hard-pressed to finish second or even third this year if this field goes all the way to Paris. It's going to be a battle royale for sure in the mountains. He's also, age is not on his side anymore, but he certainly gave the French a lot to cheer last time out. This is Arnaud Démare coming up towards the line now. And he's going to be a little bit down the field here, but that was to be expected. He's hoping to be in amongst the sprint finishers tomorrow for the win in Zeeland.
Well, Phil, talking about the battle for the overall standings, Vincenzo Nibali went through the intermediate time split there with the 18th best time, just 11 seconds off the lead. So that's not a bad performance by him, and I think he will probably come through the best of all of the big four when it comes down to stopping the clock on the final finishing line. JC Perrault now can't be too far away from coming up to stopping the line.
Now he needs to stay inside 16 minutes to stay in amongst the leaderboard going out on tomorrow's stage. He looks as though he might just be on the 16-minute mark. Contador, Quintana and Froome have achieved their objective today. They're only a couple of seconds apart, and we still wait the arrival of the last man, Nibali. And Jean-Christophe Perrault as well. Another very solid performance. Great ride. They're all going out tomorrow looking like they're still going to be good friends. The time man that took control of the race last year on a little hill in the city of Sheffield in the UK when he took the yellow jersey on the second day. And now Vincenzo Nibali comes here as the defender of the 2014. And it's going to be a good ride too. It's almost as if these guys had a powwow before the start, because they're all finishing within seconds of each other. And Nibali now is coming up towards the line, and it's going to be a very good time from the defending champion as well. But there's the winner, and Rohan Dennis becomes only the 7th Australian to wear the yellow jersey. So nice to see French television on the ball there, straight in for the interview as we salute Rohan Dennis tonight.
Well, there we go. There's confirmation that Rohan Dennis will be the first wearer of the 2015 Tour de France yellow jersey, and the only rider to go inside of. It's a phenomenal performance, a record speed for the time trial at 55 kilometers an hour. Tony Martin at 5 seconds. Fabian Cancellara third. We can once again look at that confirmation. All great individual time trialists as well. Steve Cummings, by the way, very quietly, we never saw that, and he will cross the line in 10th place. So Team MTN Quebec getting a rider inside of the top 10. But the gaps, pretty huge gaps between 1st and 10th place. 32 seconds is the difference between Rohan Dennis and Steve Cummings.
Kilometre zero is almost upon the peloton. The journey from Utrecht to Zeeland gets underway. 166 kilometres remaining. Breton Séché, the first team to attack. And Stef Clement, as expected, the Dutchman for IM Cycling. He is right on the hammer, looking to get himself into the first move of the race. And here is the big Dutchman. Peric Cumier is the rider sitting in 2nd position from Europcar. Cumier. And for the Boris squad making the move, it's Jan Barta from the Czech Republic, who is a good rider to have in the break. He's got plenty of horsepower, Jan Barta. And this looks as if it could very well be the move to get established, and established very early. For Breton Séché, it's Armando Fonseca. He's been riding with this team since 2011. He's yet to get a win, but he's had 3 seconds. 4 riders off the front, and automatically we're seeing Lotto Soudal at the head of the main peloton. They're happy with the composition of the breakaway, so they're allowing the group to go. And no surprise, it's the smaller teams that get themselves into the move. Europcar once again looking for a new sponsor. It's so often the case with the Europcar team. And they've got one of the contenders for today's stage, although they've got Peric Cumier in the breakaway. They've got a contender in the sprint finish with Brian Coquard. Brian Coquard, world champion on the track in the Madison. So he's got good craft working his way through the peloton. edX Quickstep also with 3 riders at the front. They're also happy with the composition. I'll just hit the cruise button, let that breakaway establish a lead somewhere around the 3-minute mark, I would imagine, before they start to get organised with the other teams of the sprinters and eventually try and reel that breakaway back in. A football stadium of Utrecht with a capacity of around about 25,000 people. Marco van Basten was proudly spruiking Utrecht over the past few days, one of the great Dutch footballers from the 1980s. Hailed from Utrecht, was pretty happy to show it off to the rest of the world. And here is the former Dutch national time trial champion who had a nasty fall at the Tour of Italy this year. And when he did crash on that stage at the Tour of Italy, he was busy getting patched up by the official race doctors of the race, but he was also required as one of the random riders to get tested for anti-doping purposes. And they were telling him that if he's not there within a certain amount of minutes, it would be classified as a missed test, despite the fact that it was in the hands of the race medics getting patched up. And Steph's wife took to social media. She wasn't too happy about it. He did get there on time and he did what was required and was given the all clear.
And he will find some allies on the road today. His team won't have all of the pressure of defending the yellow jersey, because the teams of the sprinters in the latter part of this race will come to the front and try and mix it up with Rowan Dennis's BMC squad. They've got the new national champion there on the front there, Danilo Wies, in the red and white jersey with the cross on there. He was recently titled the national champion, world champion as well, Michael Kwiatkowski. He will do a lot of work for Mark Cavendish a little bit later on. I have to say, after experimenting for the last couple of seasons, I think Mark Cavendish now has got probably one of the best lead-out trains in the business. Rigoberto Urán just sitting a little bit further back behind him. You can see the green jersey on the shoulders today of the man who finished in second place in the time trial yesterday. And there's a chance there to see one of the little GoPro cameras, which we'll get access to a little bit later on. Technology improving all of the time.
These are the leaders, Steph Clement, Jan Bart, Peric Cumier and Fonseca are the 4 riders out in front. 2 Frenchmen, a member of the Czech Republic and a Dutchman in the breakaway. Well, we saw incredible crowds over the 3 days of racing in the United Kingdom last year to start the Tour de France. The Dutch, a much smaller nation as far as population goes, is turning on the style equally as well.
They certainly are a population of only about 14 million people, an area which is not very large at all. You can travel across Holland in 2 hours from north to south. You can travel across it in 3 hours going from east to west. So it is a rather small country, and I would say probably 20 or 30% of the population have turned out to see this bike race here this afternoon. The breakaway has got themselves pretty much pegged. It's 2 minutes and 15 seconds. I think we'll start to see a little bit of a psychological battle too. These guys, there is a lot of strength in this leading group of 4 riders. Jan Bart, a great individual time trialist from the Czech Republic. Steph Clement, the Dutch rider, formerly Dutch national time trial champion as well. But they won't want to build their lead up too much. They'll try and conserve as much energy as possible because they know there'll be a violent reaction a little later on. Now, how about that, Phil?
Well, some people can walk on water, you see. It is possible, even if you've just won the King of the Mountains title. And as we look at that, let Jens Voigt, who's listening into our commentary at the moment. Jens, you're with us, and you are absolutely a neutral voice here. We saw the massive crowds of the UK, the massive crowds here in Holland. You were in the breakaway in the UK, chasing that polka dot jersey that this man is wearing. Just what is it like to race in front of these people?
Well, I always did live off the emotions and off the feedback from the fans. I just love the support you feel and the passion the fans bring out to the road. I mean, they are there for hours on side of the road waiting for us to come by. The fans make the show great. We would be nothing without the fans, and we can't thank them enough. And yeah, I always enjoyed it, and in my last years I did soak up all the emotions I could. It was great to see this big crowds in Holland and last year in Great Britain. Absolutely lovely to race in front of such a crowd.
Wonderful, thanks Jens, as we continue to watch these pictures here. Well, there's no shortage of water in this part of Holland. In fact, the Dutch are convinced they are the people when it comes to discussing the use of water. Two minutes 18 is the gap of 4 riders who got away literally when the flag was pulled in at the exit of the neutralised section in Utrecht, and it looks quite clear now that Mark Cavendish has decided he doesn't want this breakaway to run away with the race from the gun. He's put his Ethics Quick-Set team on the front. They're limiting the escape. It's rather painful. They've dragged out literally 2 minutes 18 seconds at the moment, Paul. The weather at the finish line is not good, but they're racing in quite nice weather.
Well, as they get closer to the coast, they're going to start to feel the wind coming in off the North Sea, and it really is picking up. It was around about 8-9 miles an hour this morning. It's up to 16-17 miles an hour now, which is around about 30 kilometres now. That's quite a wind. They're fairly lucky that on the approach to the finishing dam and dikes here, in fact, on a number of occasions, they've got these big dikes on the right-hand side. So for certain parts of the race, they will be slightly protected. But I'm sure all of the information concerning the weather conditions has been fed back to the team managers already, and these guys will know what's in store for them at the end of the afternoon.
The feature of the day so far, the massive crowds, which have certainly rivaled the opening days, as Christian Prudhomme must wonder if he's ever going to take his Tour de France back to France.
Well, it certainly it's the first time ever, by the way, that the Tour de France has started outside of France 2 years in a row. It's the 6th time that the race has started in Holland, and certainly a massive start to the Tour de France this year. I think we're going to see a long status quo now as these riders basically just try and get the miles under their belts and set themselves up for the real start of the race. For me, will not begin until we get around about 60 kilometres to go. Once we've gone around Rotterdam and then start to really get out towards the coast, that's when these riders will see a change in the climatic conditions, because it's out here, it's completely barren out here. We're only completed about 15 years ago the last links of all of these dams to control the level of the water in the Schelde and Rhine and Meuse regions, which in 1953 was a host of a very nasty flooding. More than 1,800 people lost their lives, and that's when they decided to try and control the floodwaters in this plain.
Which they now do, and they do it with a great deal of success. So they balance the North Sea when it tries to get in amongst it, and of course it also helps out, especially at the finishing line in Zeeland, where the oyster beds and the mussel fields are, and making sure that they don't sink under a tidal wave. It all works very well now. The Dutch have really got the management system well organised. A break of 2 minutes and 18 seconds. Now in 2010, the big start, the Grand Départ was in Rotterdam, and they came out in their thousands there. Well, that's where we're headed to now, to Rotterdam. We'll pass through the centre of the city with 85 kilometres left to race, and that'll be the sprint point of the day for the race for the green jersey. Then we'll know who's targeting that. The last concentrating here, this is Kemener, the Europe car rider, and comes through Clement, followed by Barter. Jan Barter rode his first Tour de France last year, which was the NetApp team. He's now on the Bora Argon 18 team. Looking for success, they hope, by the end of this day. They do have a sprinter on their squad, and his name is Sam Bennett from Ireland. I think he lives down in the Waterford Tipperary area, and he likes a rough, tough finish. Well, he might get one today.
Yeah, well, his team, when we spoke to them before the start of the race, Phil, were very buoyant about the fact that he's not scared of any of the reputations at all. This is the Ezel Hollandais, that's the name of the little river just over to the right-hand side. And interestingly enough, I think we will see a rough and tumble sprint down towards the finishing line.
Well, the river down there is 46 kilometres long, and it goes through the provinces of Utrecht and Southern Holland, which just happens to be the same two provinces that we are racing through today. And still the crowd enjoying quite warm conditions here. It's got a little bit chillier at the finishing line because it's very exposed. It's a great wildlife reserve too, where we are commentating from.
Quite deceptive as well looking at these riders because you think when you're just looking at them sharing the pacemaking like this, it doesn't really look as if they're hammering along at quite a speed, but the average speed so far has been 46 kilometres an hour. It is very flat. As we mentioned, the highest point of the race today, Phil, is 6 metres in altitude above sea level, so nothing really too much to be concerned about.
No, and that's, I take my hats off to the organisation, because that is exactly the mid-term speed that they expected from the race today. The fastest they expected them to accomplish the distance is 48 kilometres an hour, which is virtually 30 miles an hour. 46 is expected and 44 would be slower, so they're right on schedule just now. And it's because 4 riders are clear, but the peloton don't want them to get too far ahead, because they know they only have realistically maximum 6 stages in this race where the sprinter might get a chance at winning a stage. For the rest, it's one of pure climbing. It's a real tough tour.
Got to wonder about what goes through the minds of Etixx Quick-Step to do all of this pacemaking in the first part of the race, although they probably realise they've got a chance of a day off tomorrow, because they certainly won't be trying to get the victory on tomorrow's stage for Mark Cavendish, because tomorrow I think is going to be a first big battle for the overall positions. You have to ride at the front end of the main field, because if you're not well placed going up to the finish at the top of the Mur de Huy, using a good 30 to 40 seconds, and nobody wants to throw away that amount of time in the first week of the race.
Mikkel Kwiatkowski, the world champion at the back there, number 111. I also got a glimpse of Steve Cummings, who is back in the Tour de France after a 3-year gap, and riding now for the MTN Qhubeka team.
Did a pretty impressive ride yesterday as well, getting himself inside of the top 10. I think MTN Qhubeka were very pleased with that performance of the British rider on their squad.
Gouda here, and you can see now the rain is on the camera lens. The umbrellas are up, arriving even earlier than even we anticipated, but those clouds have moved in off the North Sea, and they're quite a way inland at this point, something like 40 miles inland in fact, as these riders are having to settle in. Now Jens Voigt has told us that the breakaway won't worry too much about the crosswinds and the rain, providing the road stayed narrow. It's the peloton that will find it most unpleasant. It might disturb their tempo. This is the home of the famous Dutch cheese that takes between 2 weeks and 2 years to mature. I don't think it smells too bad, does it, Gouda? It's all right.
Excellent cheese, I have to say, especially when you get the 24 or 36-month-old. Most of the big rounds of Gouda that they make here weigh in at 15 kilos. That's around about 40 pounds. And it's made mainly from the milk of the Holstein cow. Of course, you know the Holstein cow, don't you, Phil? It's a nice brown and white one.
Yeah, it's lovely. Haven't seen too many of them at all on this route so far. Still Mark Cavendish keeping his riders up front. Not got quite so many riders in amongst it now. Other riders beginning to help. Lotto, for example, in the red jerseys moving up. They're the team workhorses for Andre Greipel. Little warnings going out, because the roundabouts, if that's what it is, watch out, because they have these little cobbled approaches to them. Oh, they're actually filtered off to the right. The roundabouts are a problem in Holland, because they do separate the cars when they go round the roundabouts in 2 different tracks.
Yeah, well, we did get a chance to talk to 1 or 2 of the teams before the start of this race, who told us that they felt that this stage was so important. They'd actually been out and looked at the last 50 or 60 kilometres, and they said, unlike the Amstel Gold Race, which is a one-day race here in the early part of the season where everybody's concerned about the traffic furniture, the organisation here have done a brilliant job in removing a lot of the traffic furniture to make the race nice and safe over the last 50 or 60 kilometres. So that's fortunately one thing less to worry about for the competitors this year.
No.
Sorry, come again, please.
Will the riders actually speak to each other to signal the change of format at the front, or will they be taking orders from the team management?
I believe there will be some talks, but the way, if you look at the faces here, they don't seem to be too relaxed or too smiling. They all stressed and they all try to protect their captains, their leaders. I mean, just as I said, you see on the left side Kev and his team. Right next to it, you see Nibali and Astana. Right there, Lotto and Greipel. Then you see Contador with Tinkoff Saxo and Quintana with his team and Froome on the right side. So all the big names out here, and I don't think there's much talking or much working together here. They just want to keep their leaders in front and stay safe and protected.
Well, just looking at the peloton, Paul, this has taken on a very serious appearance now. This is, on what should be a routine stage of the Tour de France, has become a serious affair. We expected this.
Well, I tell you what, Phil, there's a lot of nervousness because I tell you one, everybody's looking for the shortest road around here. And people take all kinds of risks, and you know, it's quite interesting how people will do anything they can to find what they think is the shortest way around a course like this. And that's a question of, you've got to be attentive all of the time to make sure that you find the shortest route, because although they told us that they'd removed a lot of the dangerous traffic furniture, Holland is renowned for its traffic furniture. It's very precarious, and in fact, just looking there's another move there at the front. You see the rider from Astana. I wonder if that was Lars Boom from this altitude, because of course, let's not forget, he's a multiple world champion in cyclocross, not at all afraid of jumping over the top of the grass verge in the middle of the road there.
It's a sign of desperate moments here, because it certainly looks like the big figure of Lars Boom there as he tries to jump across. It could have been Michele Scarponi, in fact, but he's got across anyway. But I'll tell you what, these now are not chasing the breakaway. They're getting on with the in battle to keep their leaders, who could win the Tour de France, as safe as possible, as the weather is expected to change.
Well, that's an indication, really, that everybody's very, very concerned about their positioning, being at the front of the main field, making sure that they can take one or two risks, just not to lose any positions in the main field, because it's all about energy. And duck if you can. And now it's the jerseys of Tinkoff Saxo. I'm not sure really how to describe that colour at the front, fluorescent yellow camo, but certainly you can spot it from this altitude. And the fifth rider in that fluorescent coloured helmet there is Peter Sagan. He's getting himself nervous now, thinking about the points at stake. There are points available for the first 15 riders to cross their intermediate sprint point once they start to go through Rotterdam. But on today's stage, there are 50 points available. The points are really heavily weighted for the first three riders, 50, 30 and 20 on the finishing line, and 20 points available once they come through Rotterdam. So I did notice that Peter Sagan was floating nicely up to the front end of the peloton.
Well, when the wind rips like this and the going gets rough, Peter Sagan is absolutely the man for the occasion, and these conditions developing like this will suit him down to the ground. He loves a strong ride towards the finish. As Mark Cavendish consistently tells everybody, Peter Sagan is not a sprinter. He's a strong bike rider who can do a lot of things well, and so this will suit him if the going gets rough, that's for sure.
I suppose you could call Peter Sagan a man for all seasons.
Indeed. Well, we're looking out across what is now becoming the very bleak countryside here of the province of Holland Southern. And it's down here where the riders now have put all of the race favourites in safe positions near the front. The big teams, the teams who are looking to win this Tour de France in Paris, which is 3 weeks away today, are now driving the peloton, which is an unusual tactic at this stage of the Tour. It's having some effect on the breakaway at 2 minutes 10 seconds, but they're not directly racing to catch the breakaway. They're trying to put their team leaders in a safe place.
Not anymore. Look at this. All of a sudden, we've gone back to the leading group of 4 riders, but all of a sudden, Phil, there was a very keen attention being paid at the front end of that peloton by Team Ethics Quickstep. They know they've done this tactic so many times before when they've found the wind to be just in the right direction. A big acceleration splits the main field into 3 or 4 different groups.
It happens very, very quickly when it does happen, and the riders are beginning to sense that this is going to happen. And now you can see the splits, and this is what happens. They've sensed the wind change, it's got in amongst the peloton, it's put riders on the defensive. This is why the leaders were quickly moved towards the front of the race.
Well, remember what happened to Alejandro Valverde a couple of years ago when a situation like this had him lose a good 20 minutes, or 10 minutes anyway, on a stage like this, because he was badly positioned once the race started to split up. And I'm surprised to see that they've actually put the hammer down so far away from the finish. We're still looking at 105 kilometres to go to the finish line. That's around about 65 miles. That's a good 2.5 hours of racing left.
You can lose big time.
It's going to be a grippy one, this certainly this afternoon. It looks as if this group may well just recover to get themselves back in contact, but that's an indication of how quickly the main field can split up. Look at the urgency now. We've got Trek Factory Racing moving to the front. 2 minutes and 10 seconds is the information being given from the four leaders. For these guys, you could almost say it's a slightly easier ride because they're riding at the same tempo all of this time. They're riding at a steady 38 to 42 kilometers an hour, the same effort. It's a steady effort throughout the whole of the afternoon, whereas behind here, they're riding at 50 kilometers an hour, then slowing down. Contador shouting there. Well, in fact, race radio now saying 1 minute and 30 seconds. Alberto Contador is not going to get caught out. He's shouting to his teammate, use less of the road, to give less riders a shelter from the crosswinds here, as he now starts to get himself organised. So looking a bit further back now, this is a very brave, brazen move. Now look at the damage at the back end of the main field. You see the race is certainly starting to stretch out. There's the new German national champion just slipping on the back there, just 22 years of age, Emanuel Buchmann. He's been caught out, a little bit of inexperience there. Look at this again. Shouting, get over to the far side of the road, because we're giving too many people too much shelter at a time like this. And there, Rowan Dennis has not been caught out. There he is in the yellow jersey. Well, everybody knows what to expect when you get a big crosswind in a race like this. And all of a sudden, we're down to 1 minute and 20 seconds. Buchmann here, just sitting at the back. He's the recently christened the national champion of Germany. He's struggling to stay in contact. There's a little bit of a split. I'm sure it's too far to go for this to really, but what they'll do is they'll start to have a look around and see if anybody's being caught out. Now, if somebody like Nairo Quintana, for example, had been caught out unawares because of that acceleration, they would see this as a great opportunity to get some time before we go down to the mountains. We're back with the leaders. And their advantage now is not very much more than 200, 250 meters. They're looking a little bit raggedy now as well, and every time they look over their shoulders, they'll see the mass of the main field. They probably realize there's been a massive split in that peloton. But a quick assessment shows that most of the main contenders managed to stay in the front half of that split. The only two riders who appeared to me had missed out were Ryder Hazerdal of Cannondale Garmin and Joachim Rodriguez, but they will hope that they can scuttle their way back in. And I think the impetus has gone out from the front half of the main split now, because after all, Phil, it's still an awful long way to go to the finish.
Well, they don't get to continue in exactly the same direction all the way to the finish, so if they slightly change direction, the wind will become unfavourable for a short time, and then they will ease up, and that's what the back group are hoping, of course, that they can reorganise and drag themselves back into the race. But what we've just seen could well be a dress rehearsal for what will come towards the last 25 kilometres of the day, when the wind will get a...
Well, being the bringer of doom, I have to say, I think the weather is and the wind is much more violent as we get down towards the coast. Here they've got a little bit of protection. Alejandro Valverde, Spanish national champion there.
Yep, still looking okay. This is a peloton here that's continuing to work. That's Luca Paolini, number 99. 95 is Constant Chuk.
This is the second group, in fact. Valverde has been caught out.
He has been caught out, and he made that mistake a while back too, 2 years ago. using his experience perhaps, and hopes it's all going to come back together again. Simon Yates, number 109, his twin brother Adam, right on his back wheel. They're in this group too.
And the American Andrew Talansky, 161 in that lime green jersey of Cannondale Garmin, just a little further forward. Just goes to show you've got to be attentive even on a flat stage when you think there's no danger at all, because winds like this, it's almost as tough, Phil, on a day like this as it is going onto a mountain stage.
Yeah.
That's Jan Barter.
He's Jan Barter. He's decided the catch is imminent. He's going to try and go alone to Rotterdam. That'll be a tall ask in his second Tour de France. Finished his first one last year. But I don't think he wants to throw all of his energy on the road now, because this is never going to hold off the group at 14 seconds. It's been an interesting breakaway. It's been a long breakaway as well. 70 kilometres in the lead for these four riders.
Yes, I think they expected to have a nice long day out this afternoon. You see the difference. That group in front is stretched out across the road. They've all looked around. They've made a point of noting that none of the major contenders, the Fabulous Four as we like to call them, the Fantastic Four, have missed out from this group. And the long line chasing up is about to make the junction. So I think we could very well see a truce for the next 30 or 40 kilometres. But after that, as you said, Phil, I think that was just a little bit of a dress rehearsal. So we'll see a lot more nervousness waiting for that kind of move to happen once again.
And they know it will happen once again now. A nicely protected roundabout here because of that central reservation stone wall, which is underneath those red barriers to stop the riders going over the top of them. And well, it makes it hard when you've got groups on both sides of the highway, but they should have a coming together up here. And the peloton rejoined. For the moment, the panic is over with 95.5 kilometres left to ride. But there will be a repeat of all that after we get out of Rotterdam for sure. Contador was paying a lot of attention there because he was the first team to appear at the front. Saxo Tinkoff, which he came up when they sensed there was going to be a change in weather conditions. Sky were on the ball as well. In fact, they all were, because nobody missed the move of note.
I think we've come to the point now, Phil, where everybody wants a little bit of calm because they know what's in store. We were still looking at 2 hours and 20 minutes, and Jan Barter now has certainly got himself a little bit of a gap, but they're not going to give him too much freedom. They realise now that having seen that real acceleration behind, there's the possibility that the brake could actually re-establish its dominance and its gap.
It's gone out to 20 seconds. Jan Barter's been digging away. He's just on 5.5 kilometres from the sprint point. And so he's going to try and keep the breakaway for that sprint point. There is the prize money as well as the points, of course, as well. And the field, as they regroup, may not bother now. It's 1,500 euros for the first man over the sprint line.
But this has also been quite an advantage for Mark Cavendish as well, as we look at around about 5 kilometres to go to the sprint, because it's all the teams of the overall contenders who are setting the pacemaking. And Nasser Bouhanni has made an appearance at the front now. For me, it'll be interesting to see how he handles this first sprint, because there was a big question mark right up until 5 o'clock on Friday night as to whether or not he would actually start the Tour de France after his recent very bad crash in the French National Championships.
Well, we are just about 5 kilometres now, slightly inside from the sprint in Rotterdam. There's the big city as we head up towards it, and a great seaport as well, of course. A city which was built on a dike or a dam in the 12th century, and now is one of the busiest ports in Holland and the world. And based on the North Sea, of course, and the Meuse. The Meuse, by the way, is that river that runs out to the ocean here, but it goes right across. We'll see it again as we race down through Liège and towards the Mer de Huy tomorrow.
So looking down there on Rotterdam, which, as I said, is the 10th largest port in the world. It came about by the fact that they actually started building dikes in this area around about the 1100s because of the prolific number of floods. It's also the home of the Dutch East India Company. There you can see the Kappel aan de IJssel. It's a rather interesting crystal building there on the outskirts of Rotterdam, a very impressive modern complex. A huge number of containers coming through this port every year. You can see all the teams now are getting themselves. You look at the different colours of all the jerseys. The red colours in the middle there are the Cofidis team looking after Nasser Bouhanni. The man who looks after him, by the way, will be what the French like to call the Régional de l'Étape tomorrow. That'll be the day after tomorrow. That'll be Florian Sénéchal. He actually lives in Cambrai when the race goes down to finish down there. Alex Dowsett there, just a quick glimpse of Alex Dowsett in their white sunglasses looking after the line of Movistar riders. They're going to spend a very nervous 9 days. They've brought a solid squad here. I think one of the toughest squads for the flat stages that I've ever seen coming from Movistar, with 4 national time trial champions.
Well, there's still riders struggling here to get back on the race, including Thomas Voeckler there. And so he's been caught out in those crosswinds, and he's coming back in that group.
See how he doesn't panic, though. Thomas Voeckler has been a professional for so many years now. He realises in a situation like this, you're either going to get back or not. So he's not putting too much effort himself into this. He now has got to the point in his career where he's prepared to take the risk of losing plenty of time in the opening days, because he will look for a breakaway.
Now, John Degenkolb, also a man for the distance here as he tries. He's just coming under the banner on the... this is the breakaway, so this is Steph Clement who's getting it. Degenkolb on the left of our picture, digging very deeply. They're not going to catch the line, though, but right on the line, Degenkolb just got it in the black as he crossed the line there. I think he was taking on, I wasn't sure, Alexander Kristoff possibly there.
Yeah, Kristoff and Peter Sagan.
Well, I think we've learned there that Mark Cavendish may not be worried about the green jersey competition. He wants to win the stage. And, of course, it is your man, Peter Sagan, who's most interested. Degenkolb gets it ahead of Kristoff and Sagan. So as they continue on, the Barter now has slipped away, won the day as far as that is concerned. He's not going to continue alone for another 84 kilometres, so he will allow to regroup. And he would now like a drink, but it's no good asking the cameraman. And the peloton has regrouped here, I think.
They also show that
it also might have split a little bit here.
Yeah, 10 riders or so. It was Cavendish who was paying attention there. He didn't really dig deep into his energy. He just wanted to keep himself in contact, get a couple of points for free.
Steph Clement flying the flag for the Dutch there, going across in second place. Mark Cavendish crossed the line in 8th place. Bouhanni was in 9th place. So the sprinters digging in there. They all got points in the competition. First 15 riders.
Andre Greipel up there as well inside of the top 15, getting himself a few points.
Adam Hansen was the unlucky third man to fall, and he's going to have a tough chase now.
The Race Radio, Phil, was announcing a lot of numbers of Team Sky. Nicholas Roach was caught out at the back end of this group, while Pouls was caught out. Now, that could be rather precarious for Chris Froome on the running towards the finish, because he could find himself without too many teammates alongside him on a day when he probably wasn't expect to have too much difficulty.
Well, amongst those riders also left behind now is the Australian Simon Gerrans. This is Peter Kenyuk. He looks as though he might be coming back in a small group. Ivan Basso is here. The man at the base of the camera there is Thomas de Gent. He was in trouble. There's also more Sky riders here. Wout Poels is there on the left in black. They look as though they might be recovering. That's the main field just in front.
Well, this is the kind of racing, Phil, that is very much typical to this part of the world. There's a very famous race in Holland, the Ronde van Midden-Zeeland, where we're in the middle of Zeeland right now. And the Ronde van Midden-Zeeland is a race that has been dominated by rainy conditions in the past. But certainly today, it's a combination of the rain and the wind which is making this very dangerous. You've got to fight for position. You've got to make your position in the main field. Use your shoulders, use your elbows to make sure you can find a little bit of respite from the wind.
Well, Valverde has been caught out again. He has been dropped as well as he was earlier on. So this is the second time today that Valverde has been in trouble. As these riders start, Jean-Christophe Perrault, the runner-up in the Tour de France, wears number 11. He's over there. He's off the back as well. So
well, Nairo Quintana, I'm being told, has also been left in that group as well, and that is why the move has happened at the front. All of a sudden they've seen in the crosswinds there's a chance to put themselves a little bit of time between themselves and Nairo Quintana. Well, there's still quite a good armada of Sky Riders. Sorry about the picture. Don't adjust your set at home. It's because of the moisture that's coming down onto the camera lens. It looks very much like the shape of Chris Froome there in about second position, ensconced with a Sky Rider in front of him and behind him. Tinkoff Saxo obviously have got Alberto Contador right up there because that's why they are keeping the pace nice and high. Over to the left-hand side, you've got the black and red jerseys of BMC Racing. There is Peter Sagan just behind those guys. Oh, they're zigzagging left and right across the road. They're looking for the smoothest part of the surface that they can do in a stage like this. We're looking now at about an hour and 10 minutes to go to the finish. But they could, if they continue to put the hammer down like this, put some serious time between themselves and Nairo Quintana in that group. This is the second group on the road we're looking at here. This is a group of JC, or as they call him, Jean-Christophe Perrault. He's at 35 seconds. Nairo Quintana is in this group as well. Well, Movistar certainly were expecting a little bit of challenge. There's Nairo Quintana just to the right-hand side there with the white sunglasses on. Number 141 is Bauke Mollema. A little bit further forward there, number 214 is Jacques Jans van Rensburg. 191, Dominic Neurs, the rider from Bora Argon, just over to the right-hand side. Everybody really been put on the back foot, and all because of the pressure that all of a sudden was applied at the front end of the main field initially by Etixx Quick-Step. Situation like this, you've really got to keep the pressure on in the group, because if you let off the pressure of faction, you can find yourself losing a couple of minutes on a day like this. A flat stage and losing 2 minutes is certainly not what Nairo Quintana will have been dreaming about at the start of today's stage. 51 kilometers to go. That's 32 miles to go to the finish. And believe it or not, the sun is out here on the finishing line. Let's get ourselves organized in a situation like this, because this is a moment of panic. Listen to the shouting. Well, there's Pinot, number 21, Rui Costa on the far side, a champion of Portugal, number 151. Well, Vincenzo Nibali has been caught out because of that acceleration. Now he's in the second group on the road, but he's not on his own. So, everyone chatting forward. There's rider Heyerdahl looking a little bit further back. Who else has been caught out because of this acceleration? Really quite dramatic. Well, the situation has changed quite dramatically on the road now, because we're looking at a fairly small group of riders at the front of affairs. Lotto Soudal are doing a lot of the pacemaking. Mark Cavendish is in this group with a lot of his teammates. Alberto Contador is in this group, and the last time we looked, so too was Chris Froome. But in the group behind, at around about 20 seconds, we have seen that the defending champion Vincenzo Nibali has missed out on the move, and he has been caught out alongside some of the other big names as well. Nairo Quintana is in a group much further back, but Alberto Contador is looking comfortable in the group with Peter Sagan as well. There is Alberto Contador just touching his radio to find out exactly what's happening here this afternoon. So there's a big pass d'armes, as the French like to say, a big fight in the main field this afternoon, as we've seen one or two riders caught out because of this violence of the acceleration coming from Mark Cavendish and his Etixx Quick-Step squad. The race has been split up basically into three major parts. So we've got to the leading group. We've got Vincenzo Nibali and the yellow jersey of Rohan Dennis are looking at around about a 22-second deficit. And then Nairo Quintana, Jean-Christophe Pirot, they're around about 55 seconds to a minute. It's chaos on board the Tour de France Express now.
They're picking up this full-on tailwind now as they speed across this part of Holland. I'll tell you what, it's going to take some bridging now. Chris Froome has read it well. He's up there. The Movistar team are on the defensive now, and they're going to have to really work extremely hard. Valverde coming into shot now. He's going to have to do what he can for Quintana. Pinot also in trouble. The two Frenchmen who podiumed along with the race winner, all three of them now on the defensive.
Well, we expected this to be dramatic. The race organisation felt, as we look at Nairo Quintana, they're struggling with his white sunglasses. The race organisation said, if it's windy today, it's going to be a dramatic stage. Well, it's certainly turning out to be that. But this is the kind of race that Etixx Quick-Step, Lotto, the teams from the north of Europe, the teams from Belgium, they really enjoy and relish these kind of conditions.
These are perfect now, and the tailwind actually is the hardest wind at the end of the day, because you can only pedal a bicycle so quickly. And the boys up front have got the full-on advantage. Now we're entering the desolate part as we go towards Zeeland here. The elements are there to catch you out. The Maillot Jaune of Rohan Dennis is now 27 seconds back with Pinot and Nibali, last year's winner. But look at it now, 63 seconds to the riders who finished second, in the case of Jean-Christophe Pirot and Quintana. And Quintana didn't look too concerned, Paul, but he's not going to panic.
Well, he mustn't panic. He's got a lot of teammates alongside him, and strong, powerful teammates. Alex Dowsett was in there, the British national champion. He had another teammate in there, Castroviejo, Alejandro Valverde. Strong riders who can get themselves organised to limit his losses at a moment like this. You certainly must not panic in a situation like this. You've got to try and reorganise and get yourselves pulled back together towards the front end of the main field. But what I think is more important is that Alberto Contador and Chris Froome managed to get themselves into that front group. They were being attentive.
Well, you'll see plenty of these barrages here, dams. This is the one at Haringvliet. This is how the Dutch control the water so they don't lose their country under the ocean. And they're watching now a desperate moment in the Tour de France. Froome is in the hot seat, up in the leaders with Contador. Quintana is on the chase, and Pinot and Nibali are in between.
I'll tell you one thing that's also quite interesting. It must be a bit of a difficult situation for Rohan Dennis to be in, Phil, because his team leader, TJ Van Garderen, has also managed to get himself into that leading group, while all of a sudden Vincenzo Nibali, I think a little bit of panic on board for him, because he realises this is the kind of situation where you've got to nail it back very, very quickly, because if you don't, you could lose a minute at the end of the day.
Well, I'll tell you what, Paul, there's every chance if this race stays in this situation, the next leader might be Fabian Cancellara. He's in that front group.
Well, I'm just thinking our little prediction.
Tony Martin, of course.
I was just thinking our little
sprint,
prediction at the start of the day when we said, well, there's no problem for Rohan Dennis. It's going to be a normal day. There's not anybody in this race who could really take the lead away from him. Well, there's one guy that you were mentioning, Tony Martin, Fabian Cancellara as well. I don't think Rohan Dennis expected to get caught out by that, but I tell you what, there's still a long, hard ride, because we're looking at probably 50 minutes or so before we get to the finish. This race is far from over.
But they are moving now. They're going to bring this race ahead of schedule. The face of Alejandro Valverde in the centre of our picture there, as they all now try to do what they can to keep their leaders in position here. They really know now they're riding in the Tour de France, and this is a full-on race with a full-on tailwind pushing them along towards the finish.
1 minute is the gap between the leading group and the group of Nairo Quintana, just coming through on Race Rodeo as we speak, and they're getting themselves extremely organised. He's thinking it's Christmas this afternoon, because Peter Sagan, he just floated his way to the front. This man really is an incredible bike handler. He just seemed to be there all of the time, never under any difficulty at all.
And this is Tony Galopin here, who's also had his big moments in the Tour de France. He's in the best place too, in the red jersey there as well.
Also, it must be quite difficult situation tactically, because look, there are 5 riders there from BMC, and one of those riders is TJ Van Garderen. He will have been paying attention. In fact, there are 6 riders from Team BMC, so Rohan Dennis really getting caught out. Chris Froome, he's got a couple of teammates up alongside him. as we start to see the little panic. This is the second group on the road. They're at 37 seconds. This is the group. That's John Degenkolb there, Vincenzo Nibali. And the yellow jersey, well, Rowan Dennis, he has no real reason to chase. Yes, he'd like to protect the yellow jersey and keep it on his ulster. That's Thibaut Pinot. But when you see the group like this, jumping one man at a time here, another man there, that's a sign of no organisation. And now to bridge the gap, to get themselves up to the front of the race, they really do need to try and organise themselves in a situation like this. Because it seemed to me as if there were 2 or 3 big teams in that leading group who were quite prepared to make that organisation. Just slowing down and breaking up the organisation. That's Robert Gesink in second position, shouting at his team, slow down, get ourselves organised, because you can't have one man ride across on his own. You've got to be organised. You've got to have 10 or 15 riders setting the pace here as the gap continues to stretch out. I think these two groups that we're looking at now are about to consolidate themselves, but they're still looking at a minute's gap.
Looking at the front here, Team BMC, they're not worried about the location of Rowan Dennis. They're here for TJ Van Garderen, and they've got plenty of men up front. There's the merging of the two chase groups.
Yes, that's group number 2 and group number 3. You can see at the top on the right-hand side, they're just about to get caught by the group of Nairo Quintana. We're going to end up now with an extremely large group, and very often what happens, Phil, when two groups at the back like this reform, there's a little slowing down of the impetus as they start to get themselves organised once again, and if they don't get themselves organised quickly, that 1 minute and 3 second gap all of a sudden will be 1.5, and that's going to completely change the look.
Yeah.
I mean, this is only day 2, let's not forget. We've got another 9 days like this, or 8 days like this, before we get to the team time trial.
And how much attention was Chris Froome and Alberto Contador paying today when they recognised the weather conditions heading their way? They are both in that front group, and at the moment 64 seconds gain over the two most serious drivers, including that rider on the far side, which is Vincenzo Nibali, the winner last year. They've got to keep on driving. They've got to hope they can limit the losses, but with a tailwind like they've got at the moment, it's going to be very difficult to reduce that time.
Well, the important thing now is this is a huge group, and you start to get a psychological blow. You're thinking about all of the riders. Look at the names in this group: Nibali, Perrault, Pinot, Quintana, Rowan Dennis, Joachim Rodriguez. These are big names. These are guys who could finish in the top 10 in the Tour de France, and today, currently, they're throwing away a minute. They need to get themselves organised and have a full-on chase for the next, well, it's 33 kilometres, 19 miles. It's probably not going to take them much more than 40 minutes. They've got to get that into their minds and realise we're losing the Tour de France here. The leading group, Peter Sagan, quite happy to come forward as well, because Sagan now is in an interesting situation. He is one of the fastest sprinters in this group. You've got Cavendish, Greipel and Peter Sagan, but also you've got Alberto Contador. So for Peter Sagan, he's got to think about, well, they've taken it up. It's gone right back up to the 1 minute margin according to the race radio. Well, that's going to change the overall standing. 61 kilometres an hour is the average speed. That flag you can see there, by the way, with the lion coming out of the sea, is the flag of Zeeland. And that's where we're going to right now. Beautiful day, unbelievable change. We've had 3 different weather patterns come through during the course of this afternoon. This is the second group on the road. Vincenzo Nibali, Nairo Quintana, Thibaut Pinot, big losers on today's stage, and of course a sad day as well a little bit for Rowan Dennis there, who was enjoying his day in the yellow jersey. Another hand up there for Française des Jeux, FDJ. That looks as if it's Mathieu Ladagnou of France, and they've brought a very good squad to support their man Thibaut Pinot, who was actually riding pretty well there in the bad weather conditions, till all of a sudden we saw Ethics Quickstep really start to put the hammer down. Now this is a situation we've seen Alberto Contador in before. That's Michael Rogers on the far side. Michael Kwiatkowski in the white jersey. Ian Stannard for Team Sky. They now know this is the time where they've not got to think about where they're going to finish on the stage. The riders who are helpers now really need to bury themselves, because this is a big opportunity in the first week of the Tour de France as we now enter into the province of Zeeland. Of course, let's not forget Zeeland was the area that gave its name to New Zealand, Nouvelle-Zélande. And everybody, despite the fact that Tour de France is moving right, everyone's having a great time. 1 minute is the official gap over Race Radio between the leading group of 26 riders in that leading group and the main field, which contains some pretty serious contenders. Oh, there's a flat tyre for Daniele Bernati. This is Daniele Bernati's had a flat tyre again. This is one thing I was just saying before, as a professional bike rider, the one thing you do not want is a flat tyre in a situation like this.
Well, a little bit unlucky for Bernati there, because he's been one of the strong men all day for Tinkoff Saxo. They'll continue to race on because the race is saying the gap is 1 minute. Our computers are saying 58 seconds. Either way, the gap is very much still there.
Well, you know, one thing I was just remembering as being a professional bike rider, Phil, you always think about in a situation like this, please don't let me have a flat tyre, because when the gap between the groups is so small, you're in the leading group, you know that if you have a flat tyre, your chance of coming back is almost impossible in a situation like this. But what it does, it makes one man less for Team Tinkoff Saxo. And Daniele Bernati, who had that flat tyre, was an important man. Look at that. Peter Sagan has gone to the back. He's having a look over his shoulders there, because he knows if there's any chance of getting Daniele Bernati back into that group before the end, he would like to do it.
Blue skies now.
Well, FDJ putting the hammer down. 58 seconds. It's still hovering there, but all of the time distance is ticking by. 15 kilometers to go to the finish. We're inside of 10 miles to go to the finish now. Oh, Peter Sagan has now had a flat tyre as well, and that really is bad luck for Team Tinkoff Saxo. This man, to me, was going to be one of the big favourites for the victory, to try and challenge Mark Cavendish.
Wow.
He's going to do something very special, Phil, if he's going to get back here.
Well, he's the man to do it. He's the best bike handler in the business, but he's still got to chase back at enormous speeds now, because they're picking up the wind. At a minute, the gap is timed. He's gone down with a flat tyre at 14 kilometres to go. He has got to race back, and nobody's going to help him, because Contador's the defending rider.
And don't forget, he's just lost Daniele Bernati. He realised how difficult that was at a moment like that. They were in such a dominant position, having Daniele Bernati and Peter Sagan in that leading group. Then all of a sudden, your luck, Lady Luck, has moved away.
Well, it's the rain getting through those light tyres now, but the people are so committed in this front group. They know what they've got to do. Big Ian Stannard passing through there. A complete 360 here now as the riders go back on themselves. This is the chase group, and it looks as though poor old Daniele Bernati has gone back into the chase group now. A strong man lost to Alberto Contador up front.
Yes, but more importantly, rather bad luck for Tinkoff Saxo, because they had two punctures almost at exactly the same time. And I wonder what is going to be the order on board of Team Tinkoff Saxo there, whether they will slow down a fraction. They only need to, because Peter Sagan changed bicycles very quickly there. And in fact, they're saying there's another flat tyre, Jakob Fuglsang. Team Tinkoff Saxo and Astana are not having a great day.
It's the luck of the draw, and you never know which way Lady Luck's going to turn her finger here, because these are desperate moments. There's about 24 riders left in this front group. There are 3 riders, logically, who could take on the Maillot Jaune, and they are the 3 riders who finished behind Rowan Dennis yesterday in the time trial. And they are Fabien Cancellara, Tony Martin and Tom Dumoulin. And remember, there's also a 10-second wind bonus today, and Mark Cavendish will be looking for that.
Well, the big question where Peter Sagan is concerned, Phil, is how many team cars are behind, and that may well give him a little bit of a chance to get onto the back of the convoy of cars, and that's what he will be dreaming about. But at these speeds, it's going to be very difficult. Strangely enough, as I look out from the commentary position, the windmills are hardly turning around, and guess what? The flags aren't ruffling.
The wind have become just like they were when we arrived at 9 o'clock this morning here. Completely still again now. The storm has passed through, the wind has gone, the damage has been done on the race. And now we've got 2 riders here. Chris Froome, by day 5 last year, was out of the Tour de France. Here he is now with the best moment of the Tour. He's on stage 2, and he's gaining time over everybody that matters to him, except, of course, Alberto Contador.
Well, that was the big man, Ian Stannard, just on the back of that group, former British national champion. He's done a lot of pacemaking in here to look after Chris Froome, but also to try and make sure that Chris Froome and Alberto Contador can prize some time advantage before we get down to the mountains at the end of the first week of racing. 1 minute and 24 seconds now is the gap, and I take my hat off as well to TJ Van Garderen. But you know what, when you think about TJ Van Garderen, I've very often said that the American with the Dutch sounding name, but in the early part of his career, let's not forget, Phil, that TJ Van Garderen raced in conditions like this. He raced for the Rabobank development squad before moving across to join bigger professional teams.
Still TJ Van Garderen on the back, 3:38. Second, number 38 there is Ian Stanley. Looks though he's struggling a little bit as they start. And so we're looking at the breakaway, working hard now. The man most like to see wears green jersey here, Tony Martin, because he was second in the time trial yesterday. It wouldn't surprise me if Tony doesn't try to do one of his famous lone dashes to the line, which he's well capable of. Here's another round out, not quite round this one.
Well, the three riders you were talking about, Phil, who could be looking at the yellow jersey, really Tony Martin, Fabien Cancellara and Tom Dumoulin. What they really need to do for Fabien Cancellara, what he's got to think about if he wants to get the yellow jersey, is getting himself inside of the top three on the stage.
It's going to be a close sprinter, and believe me, Fabien Cancellara on his day is not a bad sprinter. He could mix it and snatch a bonus that would confirm him in the yellow jersey.
That's Cancellara over on the right-hand side in the white jersey with the black base to it. Now, he is a very canny rider. He's the only man from his team, Trek Factory Racing, in this group, and he will be riding freelance. He will have not done too much work in this breakaway group because of the fact that he's isolated, and he will try and take advantage. I would expect, in fact, I'm seeing him right now trying to move up to the back wheel of Peter Sagan. He will try and judge his sprint on somebody else. He knows all he needs is third place, because third place will give him a 4-second time bonus, and that would give him the yellow jersey.
Just remember, he's hanging on to the back of this breakaway. He's done a lot of work today for Team Sky. He's going to feel happy his team captain is safely in this group.
Well, just coming over race radio, I know it's 4 kilometres to go, but the race organisation have announced they have a competition here for the most aggressive rider of the day. They've given it to Michael Kwiatkowski, a world champion sitting on the front there, not thinking about his own chance, but riding his heart out for Mark Cavendish and for Etixx Quick-Step. There he is on the front, resplendent in the world champions jersey, a great star for the future as well.
Well, watching with us, of course, is our new commentary partner, Jens Voigt. Now, you're an ex-teammate of Fabien Cancellara. You know Fabien better than most, Jens, so what's he going to be thinking about right now?
Definitely, Fabien is aware of the fact that he might take the yellow jersey if he gets any seconds. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's like a little roundabout, Fabien comes just flying out of that roundabout and tries to take the stage and the yellow jersey. So I think he is a man to watch out, but definitely Quick-Step wants to control it for this man in the picture here.
Well, he's just behind this man in the picture, actually, Fabien Cancellara. He's choosing to follow Sagan and Mark. There he is, the man in the white helmet. He knows his riders, Paul.
He knows exactly what to do. He's worked it all out. This man has experience, and he's won the opening stage of the Tour de France on 5 occasions. But he's also worn the yellow jersey and managed to get himself a stage victory. On his day, he can rival some of the best sprinters in the world, although I don't think that he's going to rival Mark Cavendish this afternoon. That is a fantastic backdrop for a bike race.
These dikes were introduced to control the floodplains here. You see the water being let out into the North Sea here, and the oyster beds, and they control the levels. Otherwise, we'd all be underwater in this part of the world, because we are actually racing officially below sea level. 1 minute 22 seconds. This is a huge loss for Quintana.
It's not only Quintana, but all the other guys who've slipped into that group a little bit further back. Vincenzo Nibali as well, Phil, is losing a huge chunk of time. When on the second day of the race last year, he was catapulting himself into the overall lead in the yellow jersey, which he was never to relinquish. It's going to be a great day. We had said this would be a very interesting tour. We've still got a load of stages to get down to the team time trial on stage number 9, but every day I think we see from now down to the Mur de Huy, across the cobbles down towards Cambrai, is going to be an exciting day of racing. Geraint Thomas is the rider in the blue and black jersey there for Team Sky. He is very well ensconced at the front end. Behind him you've got the world champion Kwiatkowski.
Well, Sky have had a marvellous day out. They're gaining big time in the favour of Chris Froome here, who is eliminating, for the moment, some of the major climbers who will have to try and repair that damage lost today in the mountains, because won't be a lot of opportunity to gain any time for them over the next week of racing until the team time trial. Crossing over the Zeeland Bridge now, over another barrage here, letting the water back out into the North Sea, and they are absolutely flying and continue to fly. We're not far away from the magic red kite in the sky. 1 kilometre to go, and it's not just Mark Cavendish who's thinking of the finish right now. This is Geraint Thomas.
Well, Geraint Thomas, I think, has had a brilliant season so far this year, but now he has to sacrifice himself for his teammate. There is Rigoberto Urán in second position. A little bit further back in the green jersey is Tony Martin. Cavendish looking over his shoulders. He knows the man that was going to try and challenge him is Peter Sagan, but they need to be very, very careful of Fabian Cancellara.
Well, they've come through the last couple of kilometres with great safety. That group of some 25 riders that stole a march in the eye of the storm, leaving behind people like last year's winner Nibali, Quintana, who came here as an outstanding favourite, last year's runner-up Jean-Christophe Perrault, last year's third place rider Thibaut Pinot. They've all lost big time today in favour of Chris Froome and Alberto Contador and TJ Van Garderen. Now they're going to start a long straight sprint.
Well, there you can see the man who leads out, always leads out, Mark Renshaw, is on the front, in front of his own teammate there. Watch out, we forgot about Andre Greipel, because Greipel has also got a big acceleration.
And Greipel is gritting his teeth here, gets onto the wheel of Cavendish as they continue now. And Greipel is locked into second. Sagan's going as well. Tom Dumoulin trying to get into it. Cancellara is in fourth place. Can he take a bonus? He's going to have a go on the outside. Well, Greipel gets it on the line. Sagan has gone across in second. I think third Cavendish, and fourth Fabian Cancellara. Now that's a turn up. Greipel has looked like a winner all day. Well, now the clock starts now.
Well, that's the important thing, the time gap for those leading group of riders who should all get the same time, Contador and Froome, will be now looking at the clock. That's the most important thing for them. This man started the day in the yellow jersey, and he had an advantage of just 5 seconds ahead of Tony Martin. That has disappeared. I didn't see Cancellara get himself into the bonuses, so it looks as if Tony Martin...
Well, looking now at the chase peloton over the barrage as well. The gap is still over a minute by far as they continue to come up towards the finish here now. They've got to sprint it out. They need to save whatever seconds they can here. And all of the riders, the top 2 finishes behind, the top 3 finishes in last year's Tour are in this group. And look at that, the clock sailing towards 1 minute and a quarter now. Also in this group is Quintana, one of the big pre-race favourites. And also, let's not forget, Alejandro Valverde.
Well,
MTN Quebecers American Tyler Farrar brings them over the line here. 1 minute to 26:27. We'll wait for the official stop it. Here's the man who's won the day.
Show.
10th victory of his season for Andre Greipel. Take a look at this, Paul. Cam must have gone too early.
Well, he went a long way out there, but look at the power of Greipel in the middle in the red jersey. Peter Sagan is really challenging on the right-hand side. You know what?
Third, I reckon.
Cancellara may well have nicked in for third place.
Well, that's confirmed the next yellow jersey of the Tour. Cancellara will get 4 seconds, and he is the next maillot jaune of the Tour de France. And looking at gaps there, they might even split time the breakaway. We'll see how the judges feel today.
Well, more importantly, Phil, is Cancellara getting third place. And on the photo finish currently, they're saying that Cancellara is in third place. That will give him a 4-second time bonus. That will give him the overall lead.
And that's what he wanted. And what a way of turning around a season which was caused by his crash in the Spring Classics, which kept him out. Started to show his return to form in the Tour of Switzerland. Let's have a look again. No doubt about the winner. Sagan, though, that man chasing his green jersey, remember. Far side was Cav. But Cav, I think, only races for first place. And if it's gone, he sits up. And that's given third place to Fabian Cancellara.
Wow, what a stage. That was something that we were thinking was going to happen, but it turned out really well. So there you go. There is the big, powerful man. You throw in a tough racing conditions, and Andre Greipel can come up with the goods. Peter Sagan, and I wonder if that flat tire and the chase to get himself back into contact there took a little bit of a sting out of his sprint. But there's no doubt about this man, Pete. People regard him, or people call him the Griller. He didn't ride the Santos Tour Down Under this year. He wanted a slightly slower start to his season, and it seems to have paid off a little bit for him. He was missed sadly in the race in South Australia, but there I think people will be rejoicing, as they will be rejoicing in Germany as well. Looking a bit further back, Nicholas Roach on the left-hand side there. He was caught out in the crossfire. Daniele Bernati. And a lot of riders that will lose huge chunks of time on a day like this. But what a great ride by Alberto Contador and Chris Froome to take first blood against Nairo Quintana. And of course Vincenzo Nibali. Nibali a little bit unlucky for him though. That badly placed flat tyre really put the final nail into his coffin, and in a minute and 25 seconds, well, he's going to have to fight a long way back for that. But similar things could happen tomorrow. Tomorrow is a very interesting stage, moving away from Antwerp and going all the way down to finish at the top of the Mur de Huy, a very difficult, steep, nasty climb, with corners going in at 25%, and there will again once more be a little bit of time gaps in the finish. 5 minutes. So we will have a new leader at the end of the day, and that new leader is going to be Fabian Cancellara. There we go. Here's confirmation. Greipel, Sagan, Cancellara and Mark Cavendish. Daniel Oss in 5th place. Greg van Avermaet. Chris Froome in 7th, Tom Dumoulin in 8th, Tony Martin 9th, and Warren Barguil. And watch out for him. That's a good move by Warren Barguil of the team of the riders looking for a high place in the overall standings. That young Frenchman managed to get himself right in there. But the 3rd place of Fabian Cancellara is extremely important.
Showing top 10, Paul, but I've just seen a result which is shown Contador placed at 4 seconds. Now that will make a perfect day if they do split time that breakaway. It'll have to be confirmed. Of course, these initial results are always provisional, and the referees themselves decide when they split time a leading group of riders. But there's no doubt who the winner is, and here he is, Andre Greipel.
Erstmal einen großen Dank an meine Mannschaft.
Well, the question was, it's a very difficult day ending up with sunshine.
Vorne zu sein, als die Windkante losging, und Tony Galopin und Marcel Sieberg
I had Tony Galopin in the group with me,
super stark heute, und
he did a big hard work. He did a lot of hard work to get me to the right place. Well, looking down here on the Zeeland Bridge, this initiative was put in place between 1963 and 65. 54 concrete pillars to put that bridge into place. What a place to have a bike race, though, I would have to say, this afternoon. Here is confirmation then. Fabian Cancellara is the new leader of the race by 3 seconds ahead of Tony Martin, 6 seconds ahead of Tom Dumoulin, and Peter Sagan moves up into 4th place overall at 33 seconds. Geraint Thomas in 5th, TJ Van Garderen in 8th, and Chris Froome